This is episode 119 of the Steady Trade podcast with your host, normal, stable old guy, Tim Bohen.
It seems odd in the world of online traders. It's either like really young gunslinging bros or it's like old, bitter, divorced guys.
Today, Tim sits down with another normal, stable old guy, Tom Canfield.
I'm 53 and I've been doing this for 23 years, and every morning I still wake up and then I'm excited to come down and see what Santa has, under the tree for me for that day.
And together they talk about things like this.
Tim, from a quality of life standpoint, it's unbelievable. Like, I'm in cash now and I'm done for the day, and I don't care what the market does, and I won't care what the market does tonight.
And this.
For those that do follow me, I don't talk a lot about how I trade, and I don't talk a lot about trading strategy and all that, because I don't think it matters.
And this.
You'll be amazed at how dysfunctional you become when all of a sudden you really have to make money. Well, why did you take a position size 3 times as large as you normally take in that trade when all the signals said it's not probably a good trade to take? Let's talk about that, Tom.
Yep.
Why'd you do it?
Yes, it's another great episode of Steady Trade. Right, Tim?
Welcome back to the Steady Trade podcast. Today we have a guest I've been looking forward to for years, Tom Canfield. Definitely follow him on Twitter. We actually talk about this a little bit in the podcast. Him and I both are long-term veterans of FinTwit, as they say, and we both kind of get into off on a tangent about how it has kind of degraded over the years. But I tell you, Tom is a must follow. 100% positive, 100% useful information. In a sea of noise, he's a great follow. So be sure to look at that link below and follow him. That being said, I loved this podcast because it was, I guess for lack of a better term, what real trading is about. I mean, Tom started out, going into this with very little guidance. He mentions blowing up several accounts. Took him years before things clicked. Took him even more years to be profitable and actually be able to, provide for his family. So I think this is a great episode simply because Tom's, number one, a great guy, very smart, and he's the epitome of what I want to be. I mean, he's got a few years on me. I think he's 8 years older than me. His kids are going off to college. 8 years from now, my kids will be going off to college, and he's still doing it, and he still plans on trading. He mentions 10 years. I doubt him on that. Again, I just got to know Tom. I'm thinking 20, 30 years. As long as he's able, he'll be at it. And hopefully you get some of that passion from him. And, it really reminds me of what I aspire to do. I joke on the podcast about living to 120 and trading till my last days. And if you love this business, if you really are passionate about it and you're willing to put in that time, like he did, I did the same thing. I spent years part-time trading with a business, with a young family. If you're passionate and you got the desire to put in the time and the effort, you can achieve what so few do. 90% fail, sure, but 90% aren't willing to take the kind of approach that Tom does. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Great one of my favorites by far. Check out Tom Canfield. Hey everyone, Tim Bohen here. Would like to thank you for listening to the Steady Trade podcast. Really enjoy bringing it to you every week. And I've also got something great to bring to you today. We've recently partnered with Tradier, a great discount brokerage. And for $14.99 a month, you get unlimited trade commissions. No matter how many trades you make, it's $14.99 a month. And the other great thing is you can open an account with only $500. The best part about this is as you're trying to learn and grow that account, you want to minimize your costs as much as possible. So with Tradier, you can put that money back in your account instead of giving it to your broker. And that's how you grow over time. So check it out and sign up with Tradier today. All right, so as I mentioned in the introduction, we've got Tom Canfield here. Tom is a guy I've looked up to for quite some time. I think it seems odd in the world of online traders. It seems like it's either like really young gunslinging bros or it's like old bitter divorced guys. And I feel like Tom and I are like the only
we're somewhere in the middle.
quote unquote like normal guys with a family and do that, and we approach this as a job, as a career. We're not here to get rich quick, and we're not here to like yell at the internet all day long. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about Tom is definitely must follow on Twitter. I love your feed. It's all positivity. It's all great stuff. So yeah, what I'd like to do, Tom, we've chatted here and there over the years. I just kind of like to get to know you for lack of a better term. So
great.
How did you get started? I know you've been in this 20 plus years, I think.
23 years to be exact.
Okay.
It all kind of, originally out of business school, I went to work for a firm in New York by the name of Kidder Peabody.
Okay.
And did institutional fixed income sales for them for a couple of years, and was heavily involved mainly in the mortgage-backed CMO, working with a few savings and loans out there. And it was kind of like wild, wild west gunslinging sort of stuff. And I ended up leaving that job after a couple of years because I was fascinated by the financial side of it all, but I hated the people.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, my job was basically to take a guy on the New York desk and a savings and loan portfolio manager somewhere else who were both borderline non-humans and get them to communicate. And it just wore me out. And I was young, and I had other things I wanted to do, and I had some interesting things happen in my life that sort of pushed me out. And I got into the restaurant business for like 9 years.
Interesting. Okay.
Started my own concept and whatever. And then got married. Then I started having kids and everything, and the restaurant business and having kids don't mix because It's just, you're a slave to that store. And actually I ended up having 4 of them, and I had no business having 4 because what I realized is the thing that made the first one work so well was the fact that I was there 90 hours a week.
Okay.
And so I couldn't duplicate myself. So that started to kind of crumble to a certain degree. And my dad took me as kind of a father-son thing that my mom had pushed him on, since we hadn't gotten a chance to spend much time together, to a Wade Cook seminar. If anybody, I mean, this goes way back in 1997, like spring of 97. And I think he's in jail now. But anyway, he was teaching and preaching this passive income covered call kind of strategy. And we were there just basically to spend time with each other, and we both kind of liked finance and whatever. And so that was sort of how I sort of got introduced to the whole thing, because that was right about the same time the internet was starting to catch wings and whatever. And I'm like, okay, I couldn't stand the whole covered call thing, but it started me, it lit a fire of, wait a minute, I remember liking this job and not liking the people, but now because of the internet, I can do this at home.
Right.
I just got to learn how to deal with the equity. I just got to figure out equity instead of bonds.
Yeah, and you're trading your own money, so you don't have to deal with people.
Right.
So
that's literally kind of where it started from, and it was in the spring of '97. And so by the end of '97, I was spending, while I was running the restaurants and no longer able to take a paycheck because the restaurants were not doing very well anymore. And so over the course of about the next year and a half or so, I started spending more and more time trading and learning and blowing myself up and all the stuff that we all have to go through.
Sure.
And then took the leap in November of '99.
Okay.
Because I kind of had to.
Okay.
To go full time. And if anybody knows the timing of that was like the worst possible timing ever, because 2000 to 2002 was a bear market that wiped out like a generation of independent traders.
Oh, sure. Yep.
It was so violent and so vicious. But it was a phenomenal learning ground if you could survive it,
Right.
which I kind of did, to be truthful. I was getting better and better. Fortunately, my dad helped me out to kind of give me a little bit of loan me a stake.
Yep.
After I'd kind of blown up all my stakes. And so, and that time it helped me actually focus better too, because all of a sudden it wasn't my money.
Okay.
And fortunately, after a couple of years of doing fairly well, he forgave the loan and said, "Off you go, kid." So one of those things that I'll always remember and be thankful for. And you remember that stuff when you're a dad too.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So anyway, that's really how I got started, and didn't get into the core of what I did until probably late 2001, early 2002. But it really didn't apply because I was like a can slim IBD, swing trading, momentum growth stocks type of guy. I was learning that.
That's funny. That's kind of where I started when I started wanting to day trade. I started out reading all the can slim stuff. Yeah.
Right. And so I ended up doing that for the better part of the next, I still do it. And it's been the core of what's allowed me to take care of my family and everything for the last, 15, 18 years. And I've had a lot of success. My life's different now. In my opinion, the market's different now. And so I have actually started to migrate, oddly, more to a day trading strategy. And I absolutely love it.
Yep.
because of it's more of a quality of life and a relationship with risk thing for me, because the overnight risk that I was taking as time went along and the pot grew and everything, it wore me out. And when I had all 4 kids and I'm chasing 3 boys playing hockey all over the country and coaching and everything, only making money in chunks through the year was fine for me.
Right.
I didn't mind. Trading was kind of like second fiddle to the rest of my life, and I could keep it in its perspective and whatnot. But now that we just sent our last one off to college 3 weeks ago, and we're empty nest, and I've known it coming for a while, and I retired from coaching, and I got a ton more time on my hands. And it's hard to just sit around and wait for those 2, 3, 6 week periods a year, because I would literally make the bulk of my money in 2 to 4, 4 to 6 week periods for the entire year.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then the rest of the year, it's work your ass off not to give any back.
Sure.
Some years I was better at than others.
Right.
But it was easy when I had a lot of distractions. As things got more quiet, and God, this sounds terrible, but I also got bored.
Yep.
Like, I'm an entrepreneurial mind, and so I'm always looking for what's new, what's next. And the style was I had my scans, my routines, my entries, it was so routine, and it worked great.
Sure.
I got bored to death. And I tried day trading so many different times, but I'm such an emotional basket case as it is that I could never make it work. But now that life's a lot quieter, and I've burned every finger on my hand by now with all the dumb stuff that I've done, it's become a lot easier.
Okay.
And I'm a lot more patient, and I'm a lot more targeted, and I don't try and trade all day. In the first 90 minutes of the day, I pretty much make what I make, and then I move on. And it's from a quality of life standpoint, it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm in cash now, and I'm done for the day, and I don't care what the market does, and I won't care what the market does tonight. And I'll wake up in the morning, and I'll kind of see what happened in the futures market and whatever, probably some sort of obnoxious gap, because that's what we do now.
Yep.
And then see what opportunities it provides. Take advantage of them for 30 minutes to 90 minutes and hope to make enough money to feed my retirement.
There you go.
So that's kind of a long version of where I am now, from where I went to where I am today. And I'll still do the can slim, and I'll still do the swing trades. I got an account set up that's just sitting there when the environment's right.
Right.
But environment's everything. I don't care if you're day trading, you're swing trading, you're position trading. It's all about when. It's not about what you buy as much. It's about when you buy.
Yep.
And is the market right for what you're doing? And it just never is all the time. So this is helping me, because I can flip that switch really quick, because I've done it for so long. But right now I'm having a blast just doing this stuff.
Sure. Now you mentioned, like, when you were getting started, you said, in the late 90s, you were learning, and that's what we're trying to do with the podcast here. I mean, the podcast is mainly geared towards the newer trader. So like back then, when you say learning, was it just learning trial by fire, or were you reading books? Were you ordering VHS tapes at that point? What was it, going to seminars? What were you doing? So
if anybody wants Kevin Haggerty's VHS 6-tape series that is actually really good.
The best part is, like, probably 90% of our listeners don't even know what VHS is.
Right.
that was a little Easter egg I threw in there. But
we're moving. And so I'm going through all my stuff, and I'm looking at all these things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 3-ring binders.
So do I.
I got VHS tapes and all that stuff, and it's like they don't make this stuff anymore. But yeah, to answer your question, education wasn't quite as wide spanning as it is now, and I'm going to argue that I had an advantage that it wasn't.
Right. Oh, I agree.
I'm thinking about this from time to time, because I think learning by figuring it out sticks way better than listening to somebody else tell you how things need to go.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yep.
It sticks in your brain better. It gets your creative juices going better. It allows you to understand yourself within the process, which I'm a huge proponent of that, because I think who you are makes a big difference in what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
But yeah, to answer your question, a lot of it was trial and error. I'd read books, and then I'd go trade, and then I'd read a little more, and you're just sort of doing this.
Yep.
And asking a lot of questions and figuring out where you went wrong. And it's just, there's no, I can't ever give a formula. I mean, for those that do follow me, I don't talk a lot about how I trade.
Right.
And I don't talk a lot about trading strategy and all that, because I don't think it matters.
Right.
I think that's, the stuff that's more universal is how you think, how you approach it, the kind of mindset you have to have, how to figure out how to trade when you got your head up your ass.
Yep.
And stuff like, because it just happens. And because we're humans, and so much of the academic literature about who you have to be a successful trader, the type of character, the type of mindset you have to be, the optimal mindset, all those things that we all kind of strive for and learn about and hear about. I would say that 75 to 80% of the time, you're nowhere close to that mindset.
Right.
You just aren't.
Yep.
And so then how do you make it work? Which is a little bit about what I'm going to talk about at Traders for a Cause. How do you make it work when you're suboptimal most of the time?
Exactly. Yep. That's a simple fact. Is
because life does that to you.
Yeah, you didn't go to bed on time. You got in a fight with the wife.
Whatever it is. I mean, a lot of young
got
guys.
Some bill you didn't expect in the mail or something. There's always something. I mean, if
that's coming, that's going to throw you
in that Zen-like state so infrequently.
If you're single, if you're a guy or gal that's single and doesn't have any other responsibilities and whatever, Zen is easy to achieve. But every 5 years, your life is going to go through radical changes. And so and the responsibility outside of trading is going to just keep ramping up. And so you've got to figure out how to adapt to that.
Yep.
And I think that's the more fascinating stuff about trading than, whether you're trading a 921 exponential moving average cross, or you're a day trader that's looking for breakouts, or you're fading low floaters, or whatever it is. Learning the strategies pretty straightforward. Figuring out how to make it work day in and day out with all the other crap that goes on in your life.
All right.
That's the tricky part.
So, it's kind of interesting. Again, I'm just kind of getting to know your history here. It's funny you told the restaurant story, because I have a similar story. Started a business in my early 20s and was successful.
We talked about that like about a year ago or something. You exchanged some DMs over that. Yeah. And,
I had made myself a job. That's all it was a very good paying job.
Yeah.
But I was, 24/7 on call, 24/7. And that's what attracted me. I'd always had an interest in trading, but that's what attracted me to it. Was I'm just like, I love the business, and the business is still doing well today. I sold out to my partner, but it was the employees and the customers and and that's what drove me nuts. And I was trading while I was doing the business for 5 or 6 years. And I just kept looking. I'm like, man, I can, especially day trading, I can just shut this laptop. There's no bitching. There's nobody's late. There's nothing. And that's what it really attracted me.
I used to make the joke that the market can't pick up the phone and call me at 2 a.m.
Yep. I like that. I'm going to steal it.
And tell me that the baker isn't showing up for work. And so I have to now go in and bake the bagel. It was a bagel bakery and coffee shop concept, similar to what Einstein's is now, or whatever that you see across the country. I had created that before they all came around, and it worked great. But it was 24/7, like literally, because we had a wholesale business that went through the night and all that. And I would get pulled out of bed.
Yep.
Up 24 hours straight, all that. And it exhausted me. And the other reality was that my business plan and my model was being pursued effectively by a bunch of high school and college dropouts.
Okay.
Who were looking for $10 an hour jobs because that's all they could get. And so you're like, okay, the motivation levels are completely different. What I'm spending most of my time is managing idiots.
Yep. Me too, brother.
Not pursuing a business plan. If I fail at this, it's all me.
Yep.
And I can live with that so much better, and it's manageable, because I know things go 24 hours now, but I don't have to participate.
Sure.
And I don't.
Yep.
So
what this is, again, we're geared towards the new trader and someone that's trying to, most of them have day jobs, they're doing something else. Like, I get asked a lot about the time frame. Obviously everyone wants to go full time in a month. Okay. Which I tell them, I'm like, listen, no, but how long did it take you? I'm not saying you were from nothing to crushing it or whatever you want to call it, but how long did it take to you where you were like, okay, this at least makes sense to me? Do you have a rough time frame on that?
This makes sense took me about a year.
Yep.
Making money consistently off of what made sense probably took me closer to 3 years.
Yep.
It was right at about the 30-month period. If I go back and look, so 2.5 years, where I started to stop having drawdown months.
Right.
And I was starting to consistently be either green or awfully close to green every single month. Before I was like, hey, I could do this, was probably a year past that.
Yep.
And before I started making meaningful money, like, hey, honey, we don't have to just have bologna and share a piece of bread. was about 5 years.
Okay. Yep. Similar time frame for me. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I
But once that hit, I was able to escalate pretty aggressively.
Okay. Yep.
To the point where I kept chasing to see, and then it became a game of how do I manage expanding and getting larger and dealing with the psychology of I'm not buying 500 shares, I'm now buying 4,000 type stuff. And it's like, how do you do that? And how do you emotionally adapt to sizing up? Which is you've had to do it. That's a tricky business.
Oh yeah.
And there's no formula for it.
Yep.
And I would do stuff like oversize and lose big to numb myself to what losing big really was, so that all of a sudden when I moved back down to a higher level that didn't seem very scary. It wasn't a very productive way to do it, but it worked.
Okay.
For me anyway.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm jumping all over the place, but
no, that's fine. So yeah,
but to answer your question, it was 3 years before I was comfortably profitable and 5 years before I was comfortably profitable and making a living that was continually growing in a nice way. So,
and that's something that it's called the Steady Trade Podcast for a reason. That's something I talk about.
It takes time.
Every episode, yeah.
And if you're in a hurry, you're going to get your ass handed to you.
Thank you.
Slow down.
That and everybody is always in such a freaking hurry. That's one of the things that frustrates me about. You get the DMs, I get the DMs, and
all the time.
They're like, hey, this is how do I make it work? How do I make it work? And my first question is always like, how long have you been doing this?
Right.
And it's like, it's 3 months, it's 5 months. I'm like, slow the fuck down. I'm like, geez, oh Pete's, man, this is hard. I mean, this might be one of the hardest, probably will be the hardest thing you ever do. And now you're trying to do the hardest thing you'll ever do in 3 months, 6 months. You're doomed if you're trying to hurry it.
And if let's say you got a $10,000 account and you're trading a couple hundred shares here and there of small stocks and you're having some decent success, it means absolutely nothing, because you still can't feed yourself and your family on whatever it is you're doing. All you're doing is building a foundation of what works. Because when life expands and life grows and you got to make $100,000 a year, it's you will quickly learn that you are one dysfunctional mother, whatever you want. I'm trying to behave, even though you open the door that I can do it. I'm a hockey coach, so the F word is very common in our home and on the bench and with kids, and so I'm working really hard right now to stay PG. But the point is, you'll be amazed at how dysfunctional you become when all of a sudden you really have to make money.
Sure.
And we are so driven by so many dumb things inside our own head that you don't get introduced to until all of a sudden the rubber meets the road and you're actually doing this for real, and people are questioning you about what you do and why do you do it and all that. And then all of a sudden your ego gets cranked up and you got to prove it to them, or you got to prove it to your parents, or whatever it is. You just become a stupid idiot. You get out of you lose all emotional parameters of what you're trying to actually do, because all the other little demons that live inside you wake up and start fucking with you.
Yep, exactly.
That's the truth.
Yeah, it's actually I'll actually send you her link. It's kind of cool. We recently had Kim Ann Curtin. She's called the Wall Street Coach, but she's worked with Jim Rogers, Bill Ackman, and stuff. And that's all. 90% of what she talks about is the ego. It's just she was a great guest, super cool, and it's amazing. I've managed, like you, to fumble my way through it. Here 15 years later, but talking to her, I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, so much of this stuff, would have been nice to maybe realize this a few years ago,
Right.
instead of having to find it out on my own. But that's the way it goes, I guess. So,
But I think it's better. I'll be honest with you. Had somebody just flat out told me,
exactly.
it wouldn't have stopped.
I know where you're going. Yep.
I mean, I needed to do the stupid stuff. I still do it. I mean, sometimes I'm amazed. I think in my head, man, I must be really, really good to be able to figure out how to make a living being as messed up as I am.
Yep.
Because I still come in and do some of the dumbest shit. Like I'll sit there at 11 o'clock and go, wow, I am impressive in terms of what I can do that is so moronic. And then you sit there and you start thinking about why you were driven to do what you did. Well, why did you take a position size 3 times as large as you normally take in that trade when all the signals said it's not probably a good trade to take? Let's talk about that, Tom.
Yep.
Why'd you do it? And you start tracing it back, and it's like, oh, you had dinner with your dad last night. Oh, interesting. He made you feel like you weren't adequate. Oh, okay. So you felt like the market needed to like make you feel better today, didn't it? You just like, it's like stuff like that you don't think you carry and you don't think messes with you until you do stuff and you're like, where'd that come from? How did I get here?
So, what, a lot of what you talk about on Twitter, and I love your feed. And again, to the listeners, I say everybody follow it, is that mindset stuff. And, to me, it's not necessarily, like you said, it's not whether you're trading a 9 and 60 EMA cross or any of that. I mean, it's just so much about having that mindset of the trader and
right.
Again, where do you still read a lot today?
I do.
I mean, you got any recommendations for resources or how are you honing that mindset, I guess?
Boy, that's a great question. I would say the number one thing that I do now, and part of it is because I'm trying to fight to keep my mental and physical energy is as I exercise. I run.
Love it.
I do a lot of sprint work, which is, it's funny. Sprint work is basically the way that I do it, which is the way that I used to train my hockey guys. I was training recovery.
Yep.
And a big part of trading is being good at recovery. And so you're sort of like, so I do a lot of that. I didn't think about it from the standpoint of how it helps me until probably a month ago. And I've been doing it for probably 5 years now.
Okay.
It hit me that the reason that I like this so much is because it trains my mind and my body to recover after getting its ass kicked.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you run a 200 as hard as you can, and you get a minute and a half or 2 minutes to rest, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. By about that fifth 200, you're dying.
Yep.
And you're not and your body doesn't want to recover either. And so you start focusing on your breathing, and you start doing all these different kinds of things to get your body to recover. Well, that's what I find that I do here now. A lot of it is stuff that I just have learned. Again, just learned through doing it. But in terms of actively training my mind, there's probably a lot more I could do.
Sure.
I do a lot of reading, but most of my reading is not trading related.
Yep.
I find that I'm most effective now when I'm thinking less about what's going on.
Right.
So it's the escapes from the actual day-to-day that help me be effective, because I've only got a certain window where my brain is really fired up and really focused in. And after that, it starts to fatigue. I noticed that when I was swing trading, that I could only sustain risk tolerances, timing, and a great feel for the market for about 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then I was exhausted. And even if the market was still running, I started making all kinds of mistakes. And so it's like I get to a certain equity push now when I would do it, and I just hit the exit, and I'm like, I got to check out for a while. I have to. So a lot of it is just keeping my mind refreshed. It's the same way with day trading. When I first started doing this stuff, I'd be like, oh yeah, if I make X in the first 2 hours, that means I can make 3X by the end of the day.
That's the trap we've all fell into, yeah.
Dumbass thinking, but you have to do it, and you start to realize, wow, I really get pretty worn out after staring at the screens hard and timing and clicking and measuring everything for about 90 minutes. I'm pretty gassed.
Yep.
And so I gotta go step away, and to recharge my brain, I go and I go read novels.
Yep. Love it.
Love them. I mean, I have a dream of wanting to write one day. So I can turn the computer around and you can see the stacks of books that I have in my office of novels that I read, and I take notes and whatever. And when I'm doing that, I'm not thinking about the market at all.
Yep.
And that actually helps me, because the more I grind on what's going on, the more I start creating stuff in my head that isn't really there. So it's better for me to literally walk away from everything, and then 2 hours later come back and be like, well, what has happened? And it's right there on the screen, and it's easy for you to read. But if you're in it, you're reading every single tick, every single move. And A, it's exhausting, but B, your mind is creating stuff that isn't there.
That's something I call like I caution newer traders all the time, is especially like my favorite is always like, I always say, somebody will send me a chart and they'll have all these technical indicators on there. I mean, you can make yourself see anything. If you add enough indicators. And same thing, if you're sitting there for 6 hours, you're going to find something. If you're
I know what they're trying to do now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to think something, and they're about to really, jam something up your ass.
Yep.
and they're giggling about it too, because they know you're sitting there all chomping at the bit, thinking that you're really smart about knowing what's going to happen next. And I die laughing at some of the people that just love to tweet about what's going to happen next.
Yep.
And it's like, you're exhausting yourself, and who cares if you're right?
Exactly. Yep.
Because being right really isn't that important in this job.
If you're right, you'll retweet yourself, and if you're wrong, you'll just ignore you ever said it. It's
right. So anyway, it's human nature, and you can get a pretty good microcosm of all the different types of dysfunction that exist inside you and inside everybody else out in the world just by watching FinTwit.
Yep.
Because everybody's bearing their soul pretty clearly and exposing their neediness. I mean, to be honest, why do I do it?
Right. Trust me, there's a lot of days I ask myself that same question. It's like, why am I here?
Well, part of it is you're lonely. I mean, that's how I started in Twitter. I was just like, here I am sitting in my office all by myself all the time. And all of a sudden I find this community. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's a bunch of other people that are just like me. Yay, how fun. And then you find out that's not really what it is, because they're not just like you.
Yep.
And you start, and I guess part of it was, for me, it started to be a journal of reminding myself of what's important. Because most of what I tweet comes straight out of my own mistakes.
Sure. Which is valuable. That's why, it's funny. I keep, I joined FinTwit in like 2008. I think about, and maybe this is just me getting old and jaded, but it just seemed like it used to be way more useful. It seemed like there was a lot more stuff like what you put out there. Okay. And not trying to stroke your ego, but I love the stuff you do.
I'll take it though. That's fine.
I think back then it was more like, it was almost like it was maybe because it was a smaller community or whatever. Yeah. It was more actually about helping each other. Now it's just like, I don't even know what it's evolved into.
Well, there's a lot of marketing that goes on.
Well, and that's it too, or if they're not marketing, they're trying to convince you that they're so smart or something,
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Part of my push is a little bit against that phenomena, I guess, to a certain degree.
And I could tell that's what you're trying to do.
It's like, it's not fair to people starting out for us to be painting this picture of how easy this is.
Yes. Yep.
It's hard. I mean, sometimes it's brutally hard and it's cruel. Like I got just a year and a half ago, I got caught in that XIV thing.
Yep.
I mean, that's just cruel. I mean, it just to have something like that disappear overnight.
Yep.
And but that's the game we play. We signed up for it. We know the rules. Yep. The fact that there are no rules.
Right,
so
exactly.
Nothing's fair, and you better get used to that and get comfortable with that. And bad stuff's going to happen. And it's a question of how do you deal with it?
Yep.
But there's so many people out there that are spinning how easy this is, or spinning how easy it is if you just follow them.
Yep.
And whatever. And it's like, there's so many people that are just throwing their money at this stuff. And I think there are a lot of really good educators out there. Don't get me wrong. But people need to be smart about, ask questions, investigate, listen to what they're saying and see if it resonates. Do they talk about the bad stuff as well as the good stuff? Because I only talk about my bad stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need to talk about my good stuff. My good stuff makes me feel good just by looking at my account, and so.
Yeah, I always think, I always use the sports analogy. It's like, like when, obviously is talk about cruel and unusual punishment. I grew up a Detroit Lions fan, and, and back in the heyday of, Barry Sanders, it was always like, why doesn't he celebrate touchdowns? He would just hand the ball to the ref. Well, that's what he's supposed to. That's his job. Yeah, yeah. So he hands the football and says, "Okay, let's go do it again," because that's what I get paid to do, is score touchdowns. So
that's right. So it's still an interesting platform. It's I still like it some days, but I don't like it as much. And part of it is like, I don't ever retweet myself. I don't ever repeat, everything I do, I generate. And it's like, well, gosh, I don't feel like I got a whole lot else to say.
Right.
Because I've said it all. And then somebody comes out with some stupid tweet that irritates me or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, I can talk about that.
There we go. Yeah.
So there's always things that motivate me with fresh material. And so it's a good outlet for me. It's a good outlet for my writing. Yep. And it's just nice to be able to get my thoughts out into the world, because it's, sometimes I have to go and show the responses to some of my tweets to my children so that they realize, hey, somebody out there thinks Dad's smart, because they all think I'm an idiot.
There you go. Exactly.
So it's, but it's fun helping people. I do like to teach.
Love it. Yeah. Yep.
That's really rewarding, and it's a lot of fun when you see light bulbs go on for other people. It's just, how do I do that in a way where, because I don't want to start a business of doing that stuff, at least not right now or anything. And how do you do it in a way where it doesn't suck the living life out of you?
Right.
And but you could still make, hopefully make a little bit of a difference. So that's sort of how it's evolved for me.
So what, we'll kind of bring her home here. What do you think about, do you plan on day trading and swing trading until you're, hooked up to an EKG machine and they turn the lights out on you? Or what are your plans for the future? I mean, I think now I may change. I mean, I want to do this forever. I mean, I'm as fired up and as passionate at 45 right. as I was at 25 when I started the business. But I'm kind of curious. Well, you're 20. You got 8 years on me. What do you think? So,
I don't ever see a time where I'm not engaged in some way, shape, or form. It's the only thing I've ever done that at a certain point I don't get bored with.
Yep.
Now,
Same way. Yeah.
every morning, I'm 53 and I've been doing this for 23 years. And every morning I still wake up and the first thing I want to know is where futures are to give me a sense of what's happened overnight. And it's the last thing I do when I go to bed. I check to see what's going on. Where are we? And then I check in the morning. And then I'm excited to come down and see what Santa has, under the tree for me for that day. I mean, it's really so to answer your question, now, will I be day trading like I'm day trading now? I mean, I just started that.
You're right.
And I'm doing it, because I still need to make a living. Because I still have 4 kids that, well, only 2 of them still left paying college tuitions, but it's also fun.
Yep.
I mean, I love the new challenge of it. It's totally different than what I've ever done. And so from that standpoint, it gives me a real excitement. And there's always going to be layers of new things. I mean, there's always, the financial markets are going to be the same and constantly changing for the next 30 years.
Yep.
And as long as I can do it and do well enough that it makes a difference for my family, it's what I love to do.
Yep.
Now, will I try and, part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to reduce the role of it in my life so that I can do other things. My wife and I are actually moving to Arizona.
I saw that. Yeah.
And we'll go back and forth for probably a couple of years and keep the house here. But we'll go out there because she hates winter and it gets me closer to the West Coast time zone, which I really am kind of attracted to.
Yeah, me too. I've said that for years. Yeah.
I really like the mountain time zone. The 6:30 is a little brutal. The 7:30 is perfect because I'm a mountain boy, so I'm a skier.
Yep.
And so whenever I go out to Colorado or would go out to Colorado or whatever and ski, I'd wake up, I'd trade from 7:30 to like 10. And then I'm done and I go out and I ski for the rest of the day and I'd swing back and check for how things were for the last half hour before it closed. And then you go back out again. It worked and it was perfect for that.
Yep.
But I like the vibe out there and whatever. And I've been in St. Louis my entire life.
Okay.
So it's fun to have a change. But I plan on trading in some way, shape, or form. But I want to start to fight for more time where my mind is free.
Sure.
When I swing trade, and I've got my full account and even on margin in high growth momentum stocks, I don't care how strong the market is, you're a little nervous.
Oh yeah. And you're waking up at 2 a.m. to check price quotes and you're like, nothing's even trading right now. And I'm still looking up.
Right. And I don't want to live like that anymore. And that's one of the weird things that's happened is like my risk tolerance has actually gone down significantly as time has gone along. And so people all think that day trading is so risky, and I actually find it to be the least risky venture going. As long as you can manage and control yourself.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it gets a bad rap because people, they lose their minds, in 20 minutes. It's like, well, you created that problem. The market didn't create that.
That's not the market. That's you.
Yeah.
So I plan on doing it as long as I'm able to, and as long as I'm able to in a productive fashion. But I see actively for probably the next 10 years doing just what I'm doing right now.
Yep.
And getting better at it and being more aggressive with size. I mean, I've said now that all my kids are gone and whatever, I'd like to think that my biggest earning years are still ahead of me.
Sure.
And so I want to take advantage of that.
Cool. Well, I tell you what, Tom, I really appreciate this. Again, I've been looking forward to meeting you for years. And I'll be at Traders for a Cause this year.
Awesome.
Look forward to seeing you there as well.
We'll have some fun out there.
And again, I would love to, I'd love to have you back at some point because I would like to, I really wanted to kind of lay the groundwork. I wanted to get to know you more. And would love to have you come back, and I'd really like to maybe talk about, maybe just specifically mindset type stuff.
Perfect.
At that point. So, okay. Well, cool. Well, thanks a lot, Tom. And we'll see you in Vegas. So,
all right, Tom. Look forward to it, Tim. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir. So,
all right. Take care, bud.
Hi, this is Nathan from San Jose, California. And I like to drive into work while listening to Steven and Tim on the Steady Trade podcast until I fired my boss and made myself my own. You too can register to win real actual prizes at their website, SteadyTrade.com, and make steady trading a real-time gig. If you really like what you hear, give the podcast a 5-star rating, write a glowing review on iTunes. I did, and this is how we say goodbye in the Silicon Valley. See you next time.